Hi everyone, this is Gena from Golden Kinglet Crafts, and today I'm going to walk you through how to do this apple oil pastel tutorial, which is really great for beginners. Here's a list of all of the materials you'll need. I have everything linked in the description below. I'll try to also include some tips and tricks that I've learned on my journey as I go that might be helpful for you. For example, cleaning your oil pastels with a paper towel before using them helps to prevent muddiness in your painting. So I definitely recommend doing this. Here's the picture of the apple that we're going to use today for our painting. I have it linked in the description below if you want to check it out for yourself. I start out by doing a quick sketch of the apple just using a mechanical pencil. I find that sometimes graphite pencils tend to smudge when I'm using oil pastels, so I try to just go with a light hand and use a mechanical pencil and draw the form of the apple that we see. As you can see, it's not a perfect circle. Sometimes people might think of an apple and think it's a perfect circle. It's definitely not. There's a lot more hard edges in an apple than you might originally think. Here I'm marking the lines where I see shadow in the photo, and I'm also going to define the edges of the values of the apple. So when you look at the apple, you can see that there's really dark shadow on the left hand side and that it's lighter on the right hand side. So I'm just loosely marking in where my value transitions are going to be. So it's time to get started with the pastels. I'm starting with the background because when you have background color applied, it's a bit easier to gauge the values of the subject that you're painting and how accurate those values are. When you're painting against a stark white background, like this paper is here, it can be more difficult to tell. So it's nice to have something to compare it to. So I'm just trying to get some color down on the paper. This is also why sometimes in painting, you'll see people use a toned canvas, or they will even tone the canvas themselves, sometimes red, sometimes brown. It helps to gauge your values better. It's one of the reasons why you would use a toned canvas. And I even see people do that with oil pastel paintings. I've seen people even put a layer of red acrylic paint down before starting their oil pastel painting. Of course, they would let the red acrylic paint dry, but kind of can give you that vibrancy underneath your paintings, and two, it helps you better to again gauge the values. So I go in with a darker color where the shadows are and a lighter color up top where you see some of that light blue come in the reference photo, and we're just gonna mix it all together and blend. I really like to just blend with my finger. You can also use a blending stump if you want. It's helpful when you're trying to be really accurate and sometimes your finger is just too big to use a blending stump, but for the background, I think it's more fun just to use my finger. A helpful tip if you are using your finger to blend, make sure you clean your finger in between blending different colors. You don't want to use your finger to blend the background, then your finger is blue and black, and then use that same finger to start blending your apple, because the colors will definitely smudge. I've made this mistake more than once, but it's totally okay, because what I love about oil pastels is you can take a palette knife and you can scrape away mistakes. So if it happens, it's not the end of the world. You can go back and fix it. So now let's start our apple. It's helpful just to get a base layer of red down pretty much all over the apple, except for the parts where you have really bright light hitting the apple, reflecting off of it the lightest parts. As you can see, I kind of blocked off the lightest part so that I can go back in and do that later. I start to add some shadow with a darker oil pastel. And I go in with some light pink for my brighter areas. I think it's fun to add some different colors. So I like to see some oranges pop through. I will use purple in the shadow to give it more depth, as you'll see a little later. I like when you can kind of see those various vibrant colors, the pinks, the oranges, the purples coming through in the apple. It might look a mess right now, but that's okay. The number one thing that I've learned so far when doing any sort of art is to trust the process. A lot of people will say, especially for beginners, to avoid using black, but I find it helpful, and that might be more of a painting thing. When you're mixing colors, you can get a more vibrant or more deep black if you are mixing different hues of blues and browns together. I think with oil pastels, it's okay to use black, and I often struggle with getting my values exactly right, and sometimes using black helps with that. So speaking of values, values in your painting and understanding what values are and how to identify them really helps. I would recommend watching a video on values if you're not super confident in them. This is something that took me a really long time to figure out. It's why I'm literally adding more black and purple to the apple. Although you would think an apple is red, the apple in the photo is really shadowed on the left side, and so you want to make sure that you are accurately representing the value of that shadow. My issue as a beginner was that I was not adding enough shadow and my values were not strong enough. So if it looks too harsh, just keep blending. I like to also add some dark blue, the background color, to the shadow, some purple to make it a little more interesting. I think also the surroundings can reflect off of the apple and vice versa. So when you do the shadows on the apple, the shadows on the table, for example, I'll add some red to the shadow on the ground as it reflects off of the apple. Also, I realize I keep saying purple. The name of the color is actually called cocoa brown. To me, it looks definitely more like a dark purple, maybe a purple brown. That's the color that I'm referring to. So if you squint your eyes, I feel like it's starting to look like an apple. A good tip for painting is to squint your eyes when looking at your reference photo or your subject to blur out unnecessary detail and focus on bigger shapes and colors. So that's what I was really trying to do here. It's still a skill that I'm learning myself, but I feel like it's starting to slowly come together. I recommend using a blending stump for the stem of the apple if you have one, because it's easier to be precise rather than trying to blend with your finger. Honestly, if you don't have one, a Q-tip might work. I've never tried it for oil pastels, but it might be good to give it a go. When painting an object, it's helpful to think of that object as having planes. So this apple that we're painting has sharp planes that reflect light and shadows in different ways. So I'm just adding in some shadows to the top plane. As you can see in the reference photo, there's some shadows and some light, which really are important to make the apple look more like an apple. I like to go in with a lighter color, this light peach, to really try to bring out the highlights around the edges of the apple, to try to give it that three-dimensional look. Just make sure that you blend it, it's not too harsh. I feel like a big part of painting or drawing is just getting some color down on the paper and then just continually adding details, refining, taking a step back and looking at what you've done already and trying to figure out where you need more, right? So as you can kind of see throughout this process, I'll go back to the background to fix it a little bit. I'll go back to the apple, the shadows, the stem, to try to really, fix it until I'm happy with the final product. as I start to get to the end of my painting and I'm adding in those final details, the last touches, I blend out my strokes with my oil pastels less and less. I really like to be able to see the texture of the oil pastels and not have it as blended so that you can have finer details. So you can see that's what I'm starting to do here with some of the colors that I'm applying on top. I like to finish off my paintings with a really bright white for the highlight. I like to use Paul Rubin whites because they're really creamy and they layer on top of your painting really nicely. I'm sure you can just use whatever white comes with the existing oil pastel set you might already have and it'll look just fine. It's just a personal preference. And that completes the painting. Thank you so much for following along. I would love to see your finished results if you would want to tag me on Instagram, and also let me know in the comments what other tutorials you would like to see.